Joey Diaz and I started together, you know, in Seattle, me and Joe and Brody. And Joe's lived in my house a bunch, and we go back a long time. And I remember talking with him openly about telling him, there's no way you reach 50 years old, dude. There's no way. You know, I think he was at one
Let
point.
me tell you something, cocksucker.
But at his heaviest, he was over 400 pounds, Bill. Over 400. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He was a big fucking dude.
Wow.
And he was, do you know, so just like Lenny, he has no middle ground. He went from not smoking cigarettes ever a day in his life to smoking a pack and a half a day. The first day he smoked cigarettes, he smoked a pack and a half.
Oh, wow.
So that's, you know, that's who he is. But I remember.
But that's also why his comedy's so great. Because if he's going to do a subject, you know, he's smoking the whole pack. You know what I mean? He's not going to sit there and just be like, well, this is kind of interesting.
No, he's not leaving anything on the table at all.
Yeah.
Do you know, I remember when we started with him, and I don't know if you know anybody that you started with that did this. Brody and him were the same in that when they were doing their actual jokes, they were bombing. And they didn't kill until they got so mad that they were bombing that they just started to become themselves. And as soon as they started, like as soon as Brody was bombing one night, and he bombed in a unique way that like nobody bombed like him. And he went into this thing about, he was like, you know, you guys aren't laughing, but he said, I'm a little anxious tonight. He was like, do you know how hard it is for a single man to shave his own back? He said, I have trouble spots. And he turned around and he lifted up his shirt and he had like patches of hair on his back where you could see he couldn't reach with his hand. And I was like, oh, this dude's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
But when he did shit like that, it blew it up. But when he wrote jokes, he was like both of them were completely, their jokes made them seem like completely different people than who they actually were. When Joey went off, listen here, cocksuckers, that's some funny fucking, people went crazy. But like
I think, Brody's one of those guys, you know, where I don't know how many thousands of times I saw him do stand-up, but I can't remember anything other than laughing my ass off and looking at another comedian going like, just being like, can you believe this shit? Like he really was just doing his own thing. I think the thing about that, it's a weird thing where they're not traditional comedians.
Right.
But they're fucking hilarious. So they almost have to go up and go, all right, here's stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And then they try that. I remember when he passed and there was so many, not so many, but I got to know, but dude, I watched this guy's clip. This guy isn't funny. It's like, dude, because this isn't it. This isn't what he did. Like they never really captured what he did. Although the Zach Galifianakis show that he did on Comedy Central was the closest thing.
Yeah.
Like those are guys it's like, dude, you can't just see this guy once. You can't watch him on TV. This is a guy you have to go to the club.
Yeah.
And you have to get to where his brain is at. And then once that you guys are on the same frequency, it's like you push through the matrix and this guy's going to make you laugh like no fucking comedian.
100% you had to see Brody live. There was no doubt about it. 100% you had to see him live. And so for me with Brody, you know how you said he's not a traditional comic, because he actually had you laughing at things that if you looked at, if say he wrote his punchlines down on a piece of paper, you might not be able to pick out the punchline. Like the fact that he got a laugh off of his GPA, right? He would tell you what classes he took at Arizona State and what his GPA was. And he had people laughing. That to me was like, he was so different, which is why I think
it was inverted.
Yes.
Like with everybody else, there was their act, the crowd laughs, you walk over to get a drink of water, then you're back in your act. His getting a drink of water was his jokes. And then when he did it opposite.
Exactly.
So unless you had watched a ton of comedy, I don't think it made sense how his brain was. It was like he was literally up is down, black is white, right is left.
Yeah.
The whole thing was on its head. And I think that's why he was just so fucking
Bill,
like,
I remember
to this day I still can't even explain why what he was doing was funny. What he was saying.
No,
I saw
neither
one
can I.
time. I always tell the story. The one thing I really vividly remember was one night he went up there and described his dream 2-bedroom apartment. And all he was saying was details.
Yeah, but
And
that's funny. Coming out of his
like,
voice, that's
yeah,
funny.
stepping down into the living room.
Apple cider vinegar. Like, why
Apple
does that get
cider
allowed?
vinegar. Yeah, doing all stuff like that.
Bill, you know, one
fruit
time,
bowl on the table might be real, might not be.
negative energy, arms crossed. Negative energy, arms crossed. I saw him one time.
Yeah, I can't
Dude,
even.
In Seattle, at the old Comedy Underground. Did you ever play the old Comedy Underground?
I played that one that guy, he used to give you a shoebox full of cash at the fucking end of it. That guy, Terry.
Yeah. Yeah,
that
was Giggles. That was Giggles.
Yeah, that guy was a character.
He
literally gave you a door deal. So it was like all 5s and 1s and 20s and 10s all jammed together.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, what the fuck is this? I'm not going to the airport looking like some drug dealer.
Yeah, and he used to say, count it up. I think it's all there. I'm like, what? I don't. But one time in Seattle, Pioneer Square is where Comedy Underground was. Next to the Comedy Underground was just a place where there was a lot of homeless people. And there was a dude who was dressed like a clown. And like, basically it looked like 15 years ago, he had performed at a party as a clown and just never took the costume off and lived outside from that time. Do you know what I mean? Like the flower
that just could happen.
Yeah.
Something about clown makeup that you can never quite wipe it off.
Oh no, it was
Actors
smeared.
play the Joker, they go crazy. There's something about that shit.
It was smeared. He would push his flower and it just dribbled. It was sad, right?
Right.
But Brody brings him on stage one night at the Comedy Underground, the open mic, because he was always a very experimental dude. And for me, one of the things that is one of the things that I always admired about him, especially early on, to be such a young comic and be so experimental. I didn't have that kind of confidence. Do you know what I mean? To really go up and try something that you pretty much knew was going to eat dicks was not something I had the capability to do, but he always did. And he brought this clown on stage, and I forget what his name is. He's like George, whatever. And he goes, everybody, this is George. You know, I'm sure you've seen him down out here in Pioneer Square, but George, you know, I've talked to him the last couple of weeks and he's always wanted to be a comic. So I'm going to give him my time for the open mic. And go ahead, George. And so there's, about 30 or 40 people down there. And George tells a couple of jokes and they're not funny, believe it or not. And, but the crowd thinks this is part of the gig. They don't think it's actually some homeless dude off the street. And George, you can see him, he's not holding it together quite as well. The no laughter is really starting to get to him. So Brody can sense that. And he walks up and he puts his arm around him and he goes, come on, everybody. This is George's dream. Let's give George a little energy. And George looks at Brody and he goes, touch me again and I'll murder every fucking person in this room. And I was like, oh boy. Yeah. You might have brought the wrong dude on stage.
And how did Brody handle it?
He was like, George, everybody, come on, one more time for George. And he grabbed the mic and they gave him the light. And it was really, he was, you could put him in any situation.